think we go.
I think we go. I think we're live. We should probably stop the conversation about drinking beer. Mind you, it is. What is it?
Beer o'clock.
Yeah, it is beer o'clock. It's lunchtime. We can have a beer. Damian, NEWELL, kia
Hello.
ora.
Hello, kia ora, kia ora.
You good, man?
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here, mate. I've got to say I'm well impressed with the green room.
Yeah.
It's very you, Pat. It's very you.
We for people, well, people won't know, but if they've seen our intro at the start, they'll know we work with the guys at Petri Dish, who are a group in Dunedin who do shared office space. If you go to their website, which I think is just petridish.co.nz, James can confirm that for us.
Look probably be a wee link just pop up. Just
look at the penthouse, and that's where we are, and this is where we are. South D in the background.
Stunning.
And
just stunning.
Yes. No, we were just talking before we went live about what we try and do in the podcast. What we're going to try and do is do a
recap.
Well, this is a conversation, not an interview. It's more like chatting with a mate over a beer, and then we just started talking about beer. And I said our plan, hopefully, is to get our own studio at some stage, like permanent studio. And our plan is to certainly, I don't know. Shall I keep my powder dry? I was going to say maybe talk to Emerson's.
No,
or someone like that.
Wet that powder. Let's get Richard Emerson as your first guest, and then just fill the fridge.
Yeah, and get a fridge in the corner.
1812.
And then it will be. Oh, yeah, I'm a bookbinder.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bookbinder for me. And then it will be like that. You know, I kind of said I can't do this because various health and safety requirements, but I almost wanted to have the vibe that if someone wanted to light up a cigarette, they could.
Right.
You know, like if this was being done in my house.
That's some cutting edge stuff.
Yeah, but we can't do that because it's in a workplace.
Yeah, right.
But if this was being filmed in my house, it would be like if you want to smoke.
Yeah,
that kind of laid back.
Sure.
Don't want the commercial studio vibe, want the laid back, chill vibe, which is why when Jace, our producer, was kind of giving us a countdown, you and me were still talking about beer. Whereas professionals such as ourselves should know we should be quiet about that.
So what are we going to talk about?
Well, look, for people who don't know you are a long-time radio broadcaster. How long have you been in that game for?
28 years.
28 years, since you were like 4. Is that right?
Unbelievable. Yep.
I have to say your beard has always been a bit of an inspiration to me, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a little bit grey up it.
But what I know of you is you are a political animal. And I wonder, maybe if we had a beer, it would be better.
Yeah.
If we can give you a bit of space to have a chat about some of that stuff as well. Because
I don't usually need them too much of an invitation.
Well, no, but like on your fabulous radio show here in Dunedin, it's not really the place to talk about what a dick Trump is.
No, it's very much horses for courses, and as you know, with the amount of choice that people have in broadcasting these days, I mean, you get on your hobby horse and you just start losing listeners left, right and sideways.
Yeah.
We had a very graphic experiment when Bush was about to invade Kuwait. And we did this piece on the radio. It was called TWAT, the war on terrorism, and we did an update every day. And then we planned marches down the main street, and we did all that. And our audience hated it.
Right, wow.
They left in droves, and it was a really, really big wake up call for me because it was really, really crucial and important to me. And all I could see was it was a battle for oil, and it's like lots of people are going to die, and it's America invading another foreign country. And as it all turned out, we were right. But it's about in
the moment people get that patriotism, support, they're our allies. But I was going to say, Jace, can we please make a graphic at some stage called TWAT, the war on terror, the war against terror? I do like that. That might have to come back.
Well, as I say, it's like there's that old saying. It's like, is it important to be right or is it important to be nice? And that's something I'm learning. I'm not very, very good at it yet, but I'm trying to learn that because when you've got very, very passionately held views, you do want to express them to people, and you've done the research, you've waded through the bollocks and the false clicks on social media and everything, and you've checked your sources and everything, so you're pretty guaranteed that you've got the chops behind you. So when you get into a conversation with someone, I find it very, very difficult if they drop a bomb, for you not to pick up on it. But again, it's like. It is important to be nice, and that's something I've got to get my head around. In context. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that we were just saying before we started as well, I'm going to hopefully have a chat with, I am going to have a chat with the Flat Earth Society of New Zealand as a part of the podcast. Yeah. And I watched a clip the other day with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was talking about when you have someone of an opposing view, and he was talking about flat earthers, but whoever, you say to them, give me your best, your singular best argument, bring it forward. I'll bring you mine, and then you start there. And he said he gave this example of someone, and I might be wrong, but I think it might have been a flat earther for them, and they had these questions, and he gave them all the resources, all the links, all the information to solve those, and then the person went away and came back with other questions. And so at that point, Neil deGrasse Tyson went, this conversation's over.
Yeah.
Because actually, no matter what I bring forward, you're going to have your belief. Now, he didn't say this, but the way I think about that is it sort of becomes more of a faith-based religion. Whatever the issue is, then, you know, a like scientific position.
That's why I have such a, you're dead right, that's why I have such a vehement position on religion. And, you know, I think there's a lot of, you know, sort of, you know, anti-individual religions, you know, and they get the T-shirts and they get the flags and they don't like this, but they'll defend their religion till the cows come home.
Yeah.
And my point is, anything that relies on faith, you know, over science, give yourself the day off, mate. There's no point talking to them. There's no point. You're just not going to get anywhere. And the other thing I learnt, Pat, and again, I'm at the very, very early stages of this because I knew everything when I was 18, you know, and slowly as you get older, you realise that you don't. But it's important to them. Why take it off them?
Unless it's harmful.
Unless it's harmful, and that's a very, very slippery slope because most of them are at some level, aren't they?
Well, I remember, and I don't know if I entirely agree with this, it might have even been Hitchens talking about a train, and he was talking about like the carriages of the train being the people in society, and kind of going up the front with the scientists and the academics and these kind of people who are progressing the species forward. And then there was society, and they went back, and at the back he didn't use the word mouth breathers, but it was that kind of vibe. And he was like, we need to pull the pin on that carriage if we want society to go. Yeah, that's sort of what he was saying. So you know,
no, I know what he's saying with it, but I'm also a firm believer in the risk of we might as well pull out as many cliches as we can while we're here. You know, society's judged on how you look after those less fortunate, and a lot of the time, those that hang on nearest and dearest to a faith-based religion are those that need it, are those that don't really have everything else going on, and sometimes they just need that thing to cling to. And it's like, you can eviscerate their argument. You could sit there and, you know, take them right from, you know, Ricky Gervais does it very, very well.
Yeah.
And you can take them, you know, point by point, but it's like, at the end of the day, you're going to walk out there thinking you're all that in a bag of chips, and they could be absolutely decimated because you've taken the only bit of hope that they had. So it's, you know, it's a really fine line, and I think sometimes you just have to take a point out and just say it's better to be nice.
Yeah, so that's almost the agree to disagree situation.
Yeah, which I've always struggled with.
But the other thing is often the kind of ideologues you're talking about in whatever area, I think sometimes an ideologue finds it difficult to agree to disagree because they need to be right. I wrote a piece for my blog, quite a long time ago, probably 5-6 years ago, and it was called Ideology versus Intelligent Debate. And I think we'll all agree, I think you'll agree, that you're never 100% right. But an ideologue always has an incredibly strong position and always sells it as being right. And so what I like to do sometimes, and I actually hope that this podcast, not this individual podcast, but what we're doing will become a forum for that, is I actually want to say to people, and I'll give you an example, I want to say to people, where have you been wrong? Because whether it's a political position or a religious position or a morality position or a ethical position or whatever, you can't, logic dictates we're not right all the time. So when are we wrong? And if we find those places, I wonder if it's going to be easier for us to move forward as a people on some levels.
I have one. I mean, the example that I struggled with for years was the whole GE development, genetic engineering. And, you know, I heard about, you know, the frog genes being injected into my tomatoes and how terrifying that was. And, you know, and I bought the whole thing, and, you know, the Greens were on board with that, and they bought that whole bus as well. I mean, science hasn't borne it out, and I mean, unless, you know, something catastrophic goes wrong in the next wee while, and it may, who knows. But it's like, I'm warming to that now and saying, hey, maybe this is how we're going to feed the world. There are a million other things that we need to get to as well, but you know, genetic engineering isn't quite the bogeyman that I thought it was, that I was trained to believe that it was, and I hook, line and sinker, I was anti, and now that I'm reading more about it and learning more about it, it's okay to be wrong, and I might still be wrong.
I'm interested, you say trained to believe. Explain that, because who trained you? How were you trained? Like, are you talking from
self-taught?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is it Dr. Google? Is it the University of Dr. Google?
Well,
is it a political ideology that put this out there that you bought?
What happens, and I think it happens to us all, is you pick your heroes in life that you love and you adore and you worship, and it's really, really comforting when they agree with you.
Yeah.
More importantly, you agree with them.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't quite agree with them before they had that position, you probably tend to. Now, if you take that out, social media is basically that echo chamber, because you get rid of the people that disagree with you. I keep a few around for sport, but generally speaking, you do. You just, you exile those that don't agree with you, so you become just surrounded by people who think the same way you do, which is just so dangerous. And I invite controversy. I invite as many different viewpoints. I mean, it got really ridiculous for me during the last election. I mean, I was unfriended by many people and unfriended a few myself, and I just thought at the end of it, when we came out and we had no result, essentially, and Winston was going to be kingmaker and he was going to do his business and do what Winston does, I just thought, wow, was that all worth it? And you really, I mean...
When you say was that all worth it, you mean losing the friends and cutting people off, or the actual election?
Both. Both. But I mean, just dying in the ditch over things. And realistically, when it comes to political debates, it is just ideology, because you can find the facts you want to back your argument. When we're talking about scientific things, obviously, I think it's a lot more black and white most times. But yeah, I think you tend to train yourself and surround yourself by people who are going to agree with you, and that's the pages that you follow. That's the T-shirts that you buy. That's the people you hang out with, the music you listen to. You know what I mean? And I think what we've got to remind ourselves is, in this time, is what got us here as human beings is the fact that we could adapt when new information was given to us. That's why we're all here. Otherwise, we'd be dead.
It seems as well that the two streams, like an ideology, will be immovable and wrong. I'm just generalizing now. Whereas science will be movable, but still wrong.
Ask Pluto.
Yeah, and like I think about things like going through school. I mean, we're of a similar ilk. You go through school, even silly things like, this is how you do sit-ups. Oh, no, you don't sit-ups like that. You do crunches because it's bad for your back. Oh, eggs are terrible for you. Oh, now eggs are the best thing in the world. Oh, low fat is good. All these things all change as we go. And that may not be a science, because there's a lot of, I'm sure someone from your political ilk would be passionate to talk about, what's happened in the food industry in the last 50 years. But what I'm saying is, everything can be wrong.
Yes.
And I wonder if that's one of the sticking blocks, an ideology. Let's say a religious ideologist will say, well, look at all these, they used to say that this, they used to say that there was an ice age, and now they say, why would I believe that? And they will say, we've always had the truth. Whereas a scientist will say, yeah, we were wrong, and now we're moving to a different, and then the rebuttal is, well, you're wrong now. So then where do you go? And I mean, you're talking about when, I was thinking as you were talking about, we surround ourselves and we look up to people we agree with. And straight away I thought religion, because I know there are lots of people in America in the evangelical world who have started to become accepting and open to LGBT issues. And many of the leaders, in fact, I'd probably go so far as to say all the leaders, and people like Rob Bell and Tony Campolo and these people who people watching and listening may know of, are now all ostracized by the evangelical group, because although they've got 50 years of being a hero of that movement, they change one position and they're ostracized. And I wonder, that happens in every ilk of life. I surround myself with these people, I agree with these people, they agree with me. Oh, now they don't. I was going to say the devil, I didn't mean it in a religious way, but they're now the enemy.
The pariah.
Yeah.
I think... I'm just trying to think of another meme. Essentially, it says, speak your truth even if your voice quivers. And a lot of the time, it's only the brave that can step away and go against the flow, because it's very, very easy to go with the populace and whatever's current at the time. It's very easy, for example, to hate everything that Trump does at the moment. Very, very easy, especially living in New Zealand. I mean, but you actually scratch the surface and engage. And I mean, talking about the evangelical Christians, I mean, they're far more, it would appear, far more forgiving of adultery these days
than they were with Bill Clinton.
With Bill Clinton, So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think sometimes it takes real intestinal fortitude, guts, bollocks to actually put yourself out there and say, I know everyone else is going this way, you know, but I think if you believe something, you've got it. You've got to stand up for it. I mean, those are the people that are remembered. Those that sort of just join the throng aren't remembered. I mean, you know, if you back the courage of your convictions and do your research, don't be a monkey. Don't just grab the next thing that comes along on social media. I mean, you know, cross-reference. It's more important, as I'm sure you know. I know you love the news as much as I do. It's so important now that we cross-reference. You can't take anything as gospel.
I have a bullshit meter.
Yeah.
I have a little nerve in the back of my neck that goes do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And like the classic example was just the other day when Donald Trump Jr. released that photo of Anderson Cooper on his knees, apparently some people were saying, in floodwaters to make his dad look bad when the photo was 10 years old. Yep. And Anderson Cooper decimated them on CNN. Oh, look, there it is. There's the image there. If we bring that up, that one there.
Yeah.
And that was, and one of the saddest things from when they actually did this was the guy in the photo who's holding the camera with the blue T-shirt on had passed away 12 months ago. Yeah. And I saw some people post that, people I respect in America, because I follow the news and I follow this sort of world, and it gutted me because it's complete bullshit. Yeah. It's complete bullshit. And the beauty about it was, if you haven't seen this, go to YouTube and look up Anderson Cooper's rebuttal of it. In the rebuttal, he says there is lower land than this, but it's up there. And he says there is higher land and it's deeper water and it's behind me. And he was saying that when you get off the road, it gets this deep this quickly. So it was no show, it was no nothing. And yeah, the bullshit meter went off for me. And then the next day I saw the rebuttal.
Yeah, and I think also you do still have your trusted sources. And, you know, I think, you know, the yin to that yang is Trump's whole idea of fake news, which, you know, I think if we had to mock up a definition of fake news, it's anything that doesn't show him in the light to which he'd like to be shone upon.
I saw a headline today, not to interrupt you, that said something like 5,000 lies. He's told 5,000 lies since being in office. It's just clicked over.
And, you know, the yin to that yang is also everyone says, oh, politicians always lie. It's like, no, I'm sorry, mate. That everyone lies socially. Right, we all lie socially. We learn early, and we lie socially if we need to get out of shtuck. He is just braggadocious. I mean, he just lies for the sake of it. I mean, we're probably heading to the UN pretty shortly, I would imagine. But he lies, and he's done an amazing job, because what he does is, just as people are starting to work out that lie, he hits them with a bigger one. So there's no time in the news cycle. He's got it worked out. There's no time in the news cycle to go back to this one because there's a new one.
So is Trump a genius
No.
and knows how to use it, or is he like a stumbling fool who has basically just happens to get the rotation of the stumble just right?
He's got good people behind him. By good people, I mean they're terrible people that, you know, you'd line up against the wall. But the likes of your Stephen Miller, I mean, they're very, very good at Roger Stone, very, very good at reading the public mood. They're only feeding their base. This is the problem they're going to have very, very shortly in the midterm elections. Is they're only feeding their base, and that is getting smaller. So they're not widening the tent. They didn't get enough votes, you know, depending on who you listen to. They didn't get enough votes. They lost by 3 million, you know, but the Electoral College got them through.
Sure.
So they're not widening their tent. He's in real trouble for 2020 unless he changes his shtick.
I was thinking about this just yesterday, actually, because I was thinking about the midterms. And look, it's difficult at the moment to make any kind of prediction, especially after the last US election when all predictions were wrong.
But I think just point of order regarding that.
Point of order.
No one had included Putin's input.
Yeah, true.
Now, if you take out Putin's input on social media alone, you know, they say Trump won by 58 or 60,000 votes in the Electoral College. I mean, that is just it's nothing. It's a blip. Now, take into account how much social media Putin and his team put in. That's it right there on a stick. So I think to a certain degree, yeah, the pollsters are wrong, but they hadn't put the quotient of Russia in there.
But what I was going to say is, I mean, you can include that in my statement, is that who knows what's going to happen in this upcoming election. I did think just in the last couple of days, though, I was thinking, I don't think that Trump would have, like if the elections were held today, the presidential elections, I don't reckon he is going to gain a single vote. I think he's only going to have lost votes. So because there are a huge number of people, you see them all the time on news sources, on social media, around the place, who are saying, I regret my vote. You don't see people who are saying, I voted for Hillary, I wish I had voted for Trump. You just don't see it. So I think that what you're saying about 2020 at the moment, probably logically correct, is that he's lost more, but midterms coming up, this is the problem with the left around the world. It's the problem with the left in New Zealand as well, is that the right are a very good voting bloc and the left are shithouse at it. And I remember writing a piece or putting a piece up that basically said America is a left-wing country. It has been a left-wing country for a very long time, left-leaning, left-wing, whichever you want to put. And I had a metric. My evidence was that in the last 30 years, the popular vote has only gone to the right once, and that was the second term of George W. Bush when they were in the middle of the Iraq War. That's the only time that the right, quote-unquote right, has won the popular vote. That means that for the past 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, elections, there have been more people voting for the left than the right. That's a metric, a measurable metric to say it's a left-leaning country. When people say things like, you know, America's the greatest country in the world, I always say to them, what's your metric? How can you measure that? But I think this left voting bloc is a problem, and it always has been. The people who don't vote are typically more likely to be left than right. And I think that there'll be a lot of countries out there, and I think New Zealand is one of them, that if everybody voted, the left would always be in.
Yeah, I think Will McAvoy said it best, didn't he, from the newsroom? Oh,
yeah, this was brilliant. Still probably true today.
Can you say in one sentence or less what... you know what I mean?
Just skip forward a bit, because he started about 60 seconds in from memory. Yeah, keep going a little bit more.
The Constitution is a masterpiece. James Madison was a genius.
More
Declaration of Independence.
Because he has to go, it's not. Here it is, this is it here, from the faces.
You're saying...
Yes.
Let's talk about... Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey, and with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. All right. And yeah, you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies.
That was a great show. That was.
I'm so sad that show got cancelled. It was such a good show.
Until they had an episode on the capture and kill of Osama bin Laden. Will McAvoy was absolutely brilliant. And then he went all yippee-ki-yay on it because they were objective. He was objective. You know, we just saw that. It's like, you know, he would sing the company song when he needed to, but also there was this underlying thing. It's like, we know this isn't true. And then they went all in on the whole Osama thing, and it was just a bit yippee-ki-yay. But a great show. Great show.
And the funniest thing after that, if people haven't seen the newsroom, is that Jeff Daniels then went on to do Dumb and Dumber 2 straight after. I remember seeing an interview with him, and he was, and they said to him, "How did you go from Will McAvoy to Dumb and Dumber 2?" And he went, "It was surprisingly easy to get back into that character."
Great movie.
But yeah, so I like the question about metrics, because it's like, you know, if you say XYZ is the best, tell me why. What's the metrics? And I mean, Trump did it this morning, and hopefully we'll grab some more. We might bring it up now, where he was sharing the rhetoric that he's been sharing in his campaign speeches.
His daddy needs love speeches.
Yeah, but to an adoring crowd that yell and scream and shout. And he does it to the UN this morning, and they laughed. The world leaders laughed at Donald Trump when he tried to do it.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true.
God, how embarrassing.
Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
No, he wouldn't.
No, but you know what? They've already started to spin it. He said in a, a corridor interview later on, he said it was a joke and it was meant to get laughter. But right there and then, he said, I didn't expect that reaction.
Stephen Miller wrote that speech for him, and he believes that, as you say, he delivers it to those that adore him, left, right and sideways. A lot of them are paid to be there. But it's a classic case of you can fool some of the people some of the time. He is in front of very intelligent people who lead the rest of the world, and it's like, we're not buying that bullshit, mate.
And those are the people who don't need to know his metrics because they know his metrics are wrong.
Exactly. And incidentally, Fox have posted the same clip, and they've taken the applause off. They've taken the laughter off. So, it's like that's what you're up against. And the thing is, he's mentally ill. I almost, and it's very almost, want to stop mocking him because he's absolutely mentally ill. He's a sociopath. He's a narcissist. I mean, and both at absolutely off the scale levels. I mean, he just, those that are working near him, all these leaks that we've seen, the anonymous op-ed and, Rosenstein supposedly saying he was going to wear a wire. I mean, there's smoke where there's fire, and everyone's saying, well, why don't people resign? Those people, I believe, honestly are trying to stop him taking to America to hell in a handcart and the world with. Because Putin's whole objective is obviously to shake up the Western alliances, whether it be UN, NATO, or any of the trade deals. He's doing it. Trump is doing it for him, every single one of them. And I think we've just found out today that, the biggest trade deal in the world, NAFTA, Canada's missed the boat. America has kicked out its closest ally out of the largest trading deal. I mean, that's Putin on a plate. It's what he wants. And for people to say with a straight face that he's not Putin's stooge is just, I can't wait. God bless Robert Mueller. Bring it on.
Well, Rosenstein,
I think.
Anyway, who's is basically Mueller's assistant, is a better word, doesn't look like he's going.
No.
Which is really interesting, seeing... Yeah.
Well, it was very interesting because what you saw there, because he went cap in hand to the White House to see Kelly on Monday, he thought he was going to be fired or he was going to resign.
Yeah.
And both sides of the aisle came out and said, don't do it, it's a trap. You saw Sean Hannity saying, my one piece of advice to the president tonight is do not fire Rosenstein. And... the left was saying the same thing because it would invoke a constitutional crisis, and no one needs this at the moment.
Right.
Because then the house of cards starts to fall. He can obviously, he needs Rosenstein to resign, because if he fires him, he's got to go through another process to get the thing that they're doing with Kavanaugh at the moment. Another, what do you call it? Hearing. They've got to have a whole... but if he resigns, they can put in an acting man in his place.
Which means he could pick his person.
Which means he could pick his person, and also he could limit Mueller's inquiry in ways that we won't know about, i.e. Cut down their jurisdiction, cut down their funding, cut down their numbers, cut down their time frame, all of these things that we will never even know about. So that's why Trump really needs him to resign. So if he doesn't resign and he stays there, all is well in the world.
I can't remember who it is. It's on my Twitter feed. I was watching an American news feed, which I typically have going most days. And there was a commentator who said something like, I'm paraphrasing the quote, isn't it interesting for the so-called witches, for the so-called witch hunt, how many witches are actually turning up?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because they keep saying, there's nothing to see. And you have people who are flipping, people who are giving evidence, the convictions that they've already been. I know this is easy to say, but if it was the other way round, if it was, let's just say Clinton had have won, worst candidate they ever picked. If they had picked Bernie, he'd probably be president today. But let's say Clinton had won, and these exact same allegations were there. what the hell do you think the GOP would be doing?
Well, the thing is that the GOP obviously control the House and the Senate, and that's why they would do those things. At the moment, the Democrats can't do a hell of a lot. I think what they could do is get one cohesive message going on, because that's one thing the Republicans do very, very well.
Well, that's the right bloc vote as well. They get together on message.
They're good at it.
Yeah.
Whereas we sort of vacillate between, the People's Front of Judea, the Popular People's Front of Judea, and the Judean People's Popular Front.
I watched that the other day.
Still the best movie ever. So I think that's one thing that they could do. Everyone's talking about the blue wave in the midterms. I think that will happen. I think they'll get the House, and there's rumours about that they may get the Senate as well. But it's not all over and done with. I mean, even if Mueller comes back with damning evidence, it's up to Trump whether it gets released. I mean, it'll be leaked, within seconds. But then he can just go back to his deep state argument, and the world's against him. He's what he does well is he comes up with those two word or 2 syllable things like no collusion and fake news,
build the wall,
lock her up, crooked Hillary, all those catchphrases. And he does that very well because, without putting too fine a point on it, the majority of those that vote for Trump and voted for Trump are dumb as a bag of hammers. I don't know why no one says that, that we dance around it. But at the end of the day, if you voted for him, you're not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. And they don't like hearing that. But
well, can I just say, not necessarily to defend a Trump voter, that's one block perhaps, but there are also the block who are intelligent and are smart and are just sticking with their team no matter what.
Oh, yes. If they've got skin in the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, but people who vote Republican because they've always voted Republican, and people who could never vote for Hillary because she's left and she's going to want to kill every third baby in the womb. Yeah,
exactly. But what about? I mean, that comes back to our being able to change what is real. And if you were in the Midwest of America and you've watched all the jobs go offshore and you're poor and you don't have a house and he may have been the hope. And I understand that, and fair cop to that. But at what point do you jump ship? At what point do you say, I made a mistake here? I voted for him, but it's a gargantuan error. And I think we're going to see that, as you mentioned. I think we'll see that in the midterms.
I don't think we'll see that. I don't think those people are going anywhere because, as you say, they're surrounding themselves with people. But the independents, those people, the people who voted independent can go either way. So look, I actually think that it's 40-40-20. There's 40 on the right, 40 on the left, and there's 20% independent. And I reckon it's those people who always decide the election because there are the people. Maybe it's less than 40, maybe it's 20 who would no matter what will never change. Maybe there's 20% who might swing, maybe, but are likely to stay the same. And there are 20% who genuinely can go either way, and they're the ones that won't go back to Trump necessarily or won't vote. But I also think local body politics. I mean, this is an area now that you're involved in America. It's a little less about your party and more about the person as well. I mean, if you've got a really good person to represent you locally, it's less important what party they belong to and more important who they are. So that may play a factor in the midterms as well.
There'll be many factors. But I think it would still see. I think that one thing the Democrats have done well is this whole Supreme Court nomination of Kavanaugh. Obviously, we had the sexual allegations against him. There was one, now there's 2, and Michael Avenatti says that he's got a third, possibly more.
I think he said he was going to come out today. There was going to be a name that was going to come out with more, and because Kavanaugh said he was a virgin right through high school and well beyond it.
But you see what the Democrats have done, and
which can I just say means nothing about a sexual assault.
No,
because he never had sex with the first accuser, and that's not the accusation. It's like saying, look, I would never punch a person in the street because I've never been in a boxing match. They're actually completely different scenarios. You can attack someone and attempt to sexually assault them and still remain a virgin. Those things aren't...
Oh, no, mutually exclusive. No, for sure. But I mean, it looks more and more like he was an absolute scumbag. But what the Democrats have done with this, and it's morally wrong and reprehensible, but it's about time they got in the game, is they have played this so they have asked the white male middle-aged Republicans to come out and diss the those that are making the accusations. Now, the people that didn't vote in the last election were white middle-aged females. So if you've got all these bully boys beating up on this brave woman to come out with her accusation of sexual assault, that seems pretty credible. Let's face it, if you're gonna make an accusation and ask the FBI to come and investigate it, you must be pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well,
there's two possibilities. You're either very sure, or you're trying to delay the process long enough to take the house. I mean,
but even so, you can't lie to the FBI. You go to the big house.
Well, but even, I mean, like I think it was Clarence Thomas. The FBI only took 3 days to do that investigation. Yep. So
Anita Hill, wasn't it? Yeah.
Someone made a very good point the other day where they've held that seat open for 400 days. What's another week?
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, they know. I mean, the more this plays out, the more,
as you say, they know, as in the GOP knows.
The GOP knows there's more to come out. They want to get this over and done with very, very quickly before someone else comes out.
Oh my goodness! Look at this picture. It's a picture on a bus. Where is it? Somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, and the headline. Scroll down. What does the headline say? Does this woman for Kavanagh bus photo op show mostly men?
Just have a quick count up. Yes, it does.
This came out earlier this week and is mostly white men.
Yep.
There's a few women there.
Yeah, there's a couple. But I think why? I mean, the general question is all these people making the accusations, and Avenatti's got on the bus as well. Have asked for an FBI inquiry. Now, if you're lying to the FBI, if you're making a false claim to the FBI, you will go to jail. There is no ifs, buts, or maybes. Now, they've put themselves out there, and realistically, these people's lives, once you've done this, once you've stepped above the parapet, these lives are ruined. They've had to move house. They will death threats, a whole bit. So it's like, I can't understand why they would do that and ask for an FBI. And at the other end of the scale, if you're going to nominate Kavanagh for a lifetime position on the judiciary, make sure that it's squeaky. Have an FBI.
Yeah.
They keep going, he's had 6 FBI investigations, background checks. Fine, this is new information. Let's have another look at this. And if you've got nothing to hide, no worries.
And I believe one of his flatmates came out, his college flatmate came out just today saying that he was a heavy drinker, and when he got drunk, he was aggressive, or he was, not a happy drunk. He was aggressive.
And the other one that Professor Ford said was in the room at the time said that he doesn't remember it and he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I bet he doesn't.
Mark Judge? Yeah. Someone judge.
Put him under oath.
Yeah.
Put him under oath and see what he says. I mean, I just think this has become political. It's terrible. But at the end of the day, I think at some point, Trump started off with, this woman needs to be heard, and how long did that last? Now he's just saying she was drunk, she was all over it, and basically asked for it.
So we've got a news headline here. Brett Kavanaugh's Yale roommate says he believes second accuser.
Oh, yeah.
Should we have a listen? See if we can find some audio there.
This morning we spoke with James Roach, Brett Kavanaugh's freshman roommate at Yale in the fall of 1983. As he told The New Yorker and elaborated with ABC7 today, the Supreme Court nominee was, quote, a notably heavy drinker, even by the standards of the time, and that he became aggressive and belligerent when he was very drunk. Roach spoke today in support of Debbie Ramirez.
So I guess, to be fair, we got to say that doesn't mean he's a sexual deviant, but it paints a picture.
Well, the thing is, when we say that we want her to be heard, we want him to be heard as well. But I mean, the way they've asked the Republicans have asked her to appear, I mean, it's just walking into a lion's den. She's going to get absolutely crucified. But that could play to her advantage in the sense that, look, you've got all these stale, pale males picking on her.
Well, I think they've said that they're going to have an outside counsel questionnaire, and it's female.
Just makes it even worse.
So I don't know if they're going to be.
No, but I mean,
I was going to say probing her. That's the wrong word to use. Questioning her.
You're going to bring in a judicial. A lawyer essentially who specialises in sexual assaults to basically put her through the ringer. I mean, how does that make it better or more equitable? It's just, I think it's ugly, but I think they're going to be lucky to get Kavanagh through, and that's massive.
The scariest headline I saw this morning was that they've already said they're definitely voting on Friday.
Oh, they have. What's his name? The turtle, Mitch McConnell. He came out and he said that is happening. We are going hammer and tongs. And I mean, the other thing is, they started off with this, oh no, this woman needs to be heard. And now it's like, they've just jumped very, very quickly to, she's making it up and we're going to vote anyway. We'll listen to her, but then once we've heard her and she's finished, we're going to vote him on. That's what they've said. That's out there. And that's the leader of the free world. Donald Trump said exactly that. He said, just in case, ladies, that you've been sexually assaulted and you're brave enough to come forward, we'll play the game, but at the end of the day, we'll get exactly what we want as well.
And
I mean, he's been, how many times has he been accused?
Yeah, a lot. Grab him by the pussy.
Yeah.
etc., etc. I think that once again this just shows the cleverness and the evidence at how good the right is at playing the political game. I mean, to have what is, and I will say again, via the metric of the number of votes cast, arguably a left-leaning country in America, to be controlled by a conservative Supreme Court for the next 30, 40, 50 years. It's been a game
yes,
that the right's been playing for 40 years to get to this point. And they do it well.
Yeah. But I mean, and that goes back with the Koch brothers and their whole plan. I mean, it has been, and they played it very, very well. The argument I have against that is they have all the money too. They have all the money, and and that buys them a lot of influence, and they do play the long game.
I think I remember Chris Rock did a stand-up routine about being rich, and I think he talked about being rich versus being wealthy, or the other way around. And he was talking about, and I remember the example he gave in one of his routines is Shaquille O'Neal, who's now worth $300-400 million. He's not wealthy. The person who signs Shaq's check is wealthy. Shaq's rich,
right?
But he's not wealthy.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking about people who, because I think straight away about, I mean, I'm now using the stereotypes that the right do, but the liberal elite and the people in Hollywood and those, they have a lot of money, but they're not the ones who sign the checks for the movies. They're the ones who make $100 million from the people who are worth $10 billion or the companies that are worth $100 billion. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about that. Yeah, I get it.
And obviously the media as well with Murdoch. I mean, he's been able to control the way a number of countries in the world think for a long time.
Wow.
This podcast could change that though.
The world.
Small steps.
Now you've also of recent times your radio career, you're radio host and an entertainment host, and keep things nice for the listeners like you were saying earlier, but you've also jumped into the world of politics.
Yes.
Local body. Do you have any ambition to go further? You're a Dunedin City Councillor. How's that going? Is that fun? Are you enjoying that world? Is it something you want to? Are you looking for a national thing? Are you not national as in the party, but a national?
I think we can probably cross that one. No, I am absolutely loving local body politics. I think I was naive as most people are when they get in there, in the sense that you want to change the world in half an hour. What you do realise is a process, and that takes time. The other thing because I was quite an outspoken critic of said council, but the council to me, and the council to a lot of people that you see on social media, are just a group of anonymous people that you can throw shit at if your life's not going well.
Yeah.
And I think once you get in there and you meet those people and you know that you've got very, very hardworking professionals actually trying to do their best for the city, and they are, it's like the image that's portrayed is a group of Luddites sitting around drinking tea and going to China every other week, and it's just not the case. I love Dunedin. My whole reason for standing for council was basically just to do my bit, because the way I look at it is, we've had great forefathers who thought very, very long and hard about this city and where it was going to be and how it was going to be. And thank God that they did, right back to Cargill's Pier, they put that out at Aramoana, which meant we had a trading port, where we could send frozen lamb, which just changed. It was a game changer for Otago. Then you've got the people that voted in the railway station. Now the second most photographed building in Australasia, behind the Sydney Opera House.
Wow.
Then latterly Moana Pool, and more recently, because Moana Pool was the most patronised pool in Australasia for many, many years, and it was a huge investment for the city at the time. And latterly, of course, God bless, the Forsyth Bar Stadium. So I'm really proud of where we've come from, and it's like I just want to chip in. I have no I have no real ambition to go any higher with that, in the sense that I think the mayor's job, never say never, but I think the mayor's job is a relatively thankless task. I think Dave Cull is very proficient in the back room. A lot of which the public do not see, but I think Dunedin's on a great trajectory at the moment, and it's just a case of hang on. I mean, we've got a few problems that come with that. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a housing shortage over the next wee while, so we've got to look after that. We've also got the problems with South Dunedin as we look out the window and that beautiful ocean. It's getting closer and closer by the day.
I remember doing a story, and I was doing some stuff with the ODT, and it's not just that the sea level was rising, but actually South Dunedin was sinking. So actually, it wasn't just the sea level doing this, like if that's the land, it wasn't just the sea level coming up, it was sort of doing this. And I remember doing the math, and if the trajectory had stayed even, it was something like 16 years.
I mean, we've seen a number of those graphs. Basically, Minister of the Environment were down the other day, and from what they said was, over the next 20 years, all we'll learn is how bad it's going to be. Because we've got a double-edged sword in South Dunedin, in the sense, possibly triple if it's sinking as well. But you've got groundwater.
Is that news to you?
Well, it's a swamp, so not so much. But you've got groundwater rising, but you've also got storm surge, and that is a terrible combination, because you know where you get it, and everyone, and we've had councillors sort of suggest that we build a wall, and we build a wall from Lawyer's Head to St Clair, and one just won't work, but because you've got the groundwater as well. But also it's going to be a combination of solutions. It's going to be, we're going to need pumps, we're going to need wetlands, we're going to need holding ponds.
Let me ask this question, right?
Yep.
And this question is a really naive question, and it's based on a friend of mine who had a house in West Auckland. They were on a 100-year floodplain, and the council went, "You're gone. We're buying your house. You're out." Why not just the areas at risk? We just go park. Like, I mean, I know this is not a Dunedin podcast,
no,
but we're talking about it because this is a relevant question for other places where sea level is rising. Why doesn't the council, the central government, whatever, say, in the next 20 years, here are the 100, 200, 300 most seriously at risk buildings. You're gone. Here's the payout. Go away, buy elsewhere, do what you need to do, and then after that, look at the next round, and after that, look at the next round. Well, they basically did it in Christchurch for a quake. We're just basically preempting our natural disaster. Why don't they get onto it?
Our natural disaster is happening in slow motion, and the problem we have is we don't have 200 or 300 houses. We have 3,604, I think, at last count, that are in the gun directly. Now, that could be over the next 20 years, it could be over the next 50 years, it could be over the next 100 years. So at what point... This is the huge thing, and one example, I think it's Whitianga, but I could be wrong. What happened up there was the council did projections on where the 100-year flood line was going to be, and a lot of these beautiful $1 million properties had the water line going right through the middle of their lounge. And they said, well, hang on, you've just devalued our property by X amount of dollars. They took the council to the court, and they had to take that off the limb. Right. So the council were aware of it. They tried to warn others that was going to be the case, and lost in public court.
But isn't that similar here? I mean, again, not a Dunedin podcast, so this goes for any coastal area.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember
it's up and down the country.
We lived up the hill to start off with, right? I always said I would never buy. I mean, I'd flat in South Dunedin, but I'd never buy a property in South Dunedin in those flood-zoned areas. Isn't that already known? Don't people already know that? Does that not have to be on the limb or whatever?
If you're buying now, yes. If you were buying 20 years ago, no, you wouldn't have known. And this is the problem. And a lot of those residents are our oldest, most vulnerable in the sense they don't have pockets of wedge. I mean, what we saw this year was the Australian Insurance Council come out and say, here's, I think it was a $91 premium they were putting on properties for flooding, essentially. So if you take that to its natural conclusion, they'll either say, look, we'll do fire, we'll do burglary or whatever. We're not doing flood anymore, so we're not insuring you against flood. So then if you're sitting in your $800,000 house anywhere on the coast,
right,
how the hell do you sell it? It's not worth a tin of shit, because at the end of the day, the insurance company won't cover you. So then anyone buying can't get insurance.
Which means they won't get a mortgage.
Which won't. So at what point does that kick in? And that's the conversation that we're having up and down the country. And it's not only us, but we've got to have, and it's very, very hard also. What we've got to do is we've got to take the residents along We've got to give them all the information we've got and trust that they will make the decision. We can't do it for them because we're asking them to up tools and move out of Hurricane Alley, you know, and they've been there all their lives. They love it. They love those that live in South Dunedin, as you know, mate, and you know, anywhere in New Zealand.
It's a great community.
It's a great community,
it's awesome.
and it's a great place to live, and they love it. So you can't just waltz in there and say, look, stats here, this is our metrics. You're out.
Yeah. I was being a little bit curt.
No, I know.
For the sake of expedience.
No, I know. And that's the thing. It's because that's exactly the conversation we're having at the moment. At what point do we push the button? And which button do we push?
Well, I was going to say, that means there is a button to be pushed.
Well, we don't know what that is because obviously if there's a buyback of 3,600 odd houses, we can't do that as a council. That's got to be central government money. I mean, that's what happened in Christchurch. So there's got to be that, component, and at the moment we don't have that. The central government have shown little or no interest in writing a cheque for 3,600 homes.
Well, I guess if they did that here,
exactly,
you'd then have to go. What are the coastal areas? I mean, I think South Dunedin is in particular risk because the harbour on one side and the sea on the other, the Pacific on the other. So, I mean, but there'd be a handful, 10, 15, 20, whatever other communities around New Zealand that would be the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could there be, I mean, this was my idea again, South, a Dunedin thing.
Shoot.
Could we? What would happen if there was like a canal put from the harbour through to the sea? Would that empty the harbour out? Would that level out? What would happen to bring some? So in other words, funneling the water. Well,
it would find its own level, but I mean, what we've also got to do is you'd have to have pumping stations all over South Dunedin because if the groundwater became that much of an issue, and at the moment, you know, depending on who you talk to, it is like I had a friend who built a deck recently, and in a high tide, the holes where they were putting the posts were full.
Oh wow!
You know, so it's like it's not far away. Yeah. You know, so it's going to be a combination. All we've heard so far is we can't do one thing or the other. You know, I think the last time the seawall breached was in the early 20th century, and the water went up to Hillside Road. You know, for those of you who don't know Dunedin, that's most of South Dunedin.
Well, yeah, that's massive.
So that's massive. When it happens, if it happens, it's going to be quite dramatic. So there's going to be a number of solutions. As I say, it all involve wetlands, it all involve holding ponds. The other thing to take into account is anywhere you've got a big, one of the big retailers, you know, your Bunnings, your Mitre 10 or whatever, or the supermarkets, they've taken all this ground and they've tar sealed it. So the ground can't soak up water anymore. There's nowhere for it to go.
Yeah.
There's a million different things that contribute to it. I mean, I'm one of the main reasons I went on to council was for the South Dunedin thing. The other thing is our dump. It's about to run out. So, you know, and waste management is a huge thing for our country. Being at the bottom of the world, you know, we've got to find markets for our plastic. China have just said no, so we've got to try and find new markets for our plastic and our glass, or we deal with them here and make that somehow financially viable. So.
Hey, look, it's going to be time to take off shortly, but just before we do, I want to ask you something. Jace, can you Google, look up for a video, protest outside Antler restaurant, vegan protest outside Antler restaurant. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to do with this podcast is we're going to have a series of podcasts where we talk to people who have minority positions in society. I'm going to have the Flat Earth guys come in. I'm really looking forward to chatting to them. But one of the other groups I'm going to have coming is a vegan, and I see your T-shirt.
Yes.
Lovely vegan on it.
Yes.
The reason I want to speak to vegans is because of this protest I saw. Can we have some volume on this? So this is in Canada.
Going on in Antler restaurant. Food or friends? Food or friends? Where's the line drawn? Where does it begin?
So this is...
I am the cow of innocence. And I'm here...
And what they do, if you scroll forward a bit, it's a restaurant that kind of serves. It's got antlers are its thing, so it's lots of game, that sort of stuff. And what the owner ended up doing was getting a leg of a deer and carving it in the window in front of them. And this started a whole conversation. There was another one where a woman went into a restaurant and talked about My Little Friend, and she was talking about a chicken, and she went into the restaurant as a protest. They were like talking about, I want to tell you about My Little Friend, and she was talking about a chicken as a vegan protest. And I sometimes wonder, a bit like the political scene, the left is not very good at protesting. Like there was a thing overnight where a bunch of left activists chased Ted Cruz and his wife out of a restaurant. Pointless. One of the reasons the right is strong is because they look at that and they think unfair, not fair.
Yeah, I question that. I don't think Ted Cruz can do what he has done to the American people and support tacitly what Trump has done to the American people and expect to get off scot-free.
Fair enough, but I guess what I'm saying is a lot of people would look at that and think, stand outside,
I hear you.
Stand outside and protest like those guys are doing. That's fine, but going into the restaurant, other people, etc. I don't know if I guess from someone who works a bit in marketing and advertising, I think about the message that's being sold.
Yeah, I do too.
So this is the guy. This is what he was doing. He then carved. You may not be able to look at this if you're vegan. I'm not sure. So they were talking about he was a murderer, and so he brought the leg of whatever it was, deer out, and he just carved it there in the thing. And this was one of the things that made me think it's really interesting perspective, and I don't want to use ideology because we'll just use it in a bad sense, but in a lifestyle choice of veganism. Tell me about it for you. What's it all about?
Well, first and foremost, it's not about raining on other people's parade. The reason people have an absolute aversion to vegans en masse is it challenges everything about their life, right? And people say, oh, they're so militant, they're so up in your face. And those guys were, right?
Yeah.
I'm not. I was brought up on a dairy farm. I've been hunting, I've been shooting, I've done all the things and, killed my own food. And I still live with a family of carnivores, right? From south of here. So trust me, for me, I've always had an affinity with animals, and we got some hens because we wanted the free-range eggs for the kids.
Yep.
And then suddenly these bloody things became pets.
Yeah.
And you see their little personalities and their quirks, and they run up to you and give you a hug and all these sorts of things. And I thought, I could kill you if I had to, but I couldn't kill you for a sandwich.
Right.
And once you get into that space, the other way you put it back on people, and you just say, okay, you want to eat meat. And I have no problem with hunting, right? If pig hunting I do because I think it's absolutely cruel. I mean, you set your dogs onto the pig for God knows how long. Now, if you did that to a cat, you go to jail.
Right.
Why do we see that that's okay? Because a pig has the same age, they say, mental capacity as a 4-year-old. So why are we... But you just put it back on people and say, okay, if you had to kill your own food,
yep,
could you do it?
Yep.
And my argument is I couldn't, so I won't. And that's as simple and clear as it is for me. But when people say, vegans are very, very militant and it challenges everything about. That's what makes you feel sad, because the thing is, you look at if you send 10 5-year-old kids into a room with a puppy and a pig, they'll play with both.
Right.
They won't grab a knife and fork when they head towards the pig, will they? We're not, and everyone says, that's why we're at the top of the food chain and everything. And, the constant, where do you get your protein? Where does an elephant get its protein? Where does a rhino get its protein?
So where do you get your protein?
Plants. All protein comes from plants. Look at a gorilla, a silverback gorilla,
Do you eat eggs? I mean, I know you said vegan, that does make sense, but there's always been a conversation that I've heard people saying an unfertilised egg.
And there's honey and there's all sorts of things. This is why I'm not militant about it, because I live in a family, and my lady is very kind to me, and she cooks me mostly vegan meals.
Yeah.
We've got our own hens. I know if those hens could wrap those eggs and put a bow on them for the lifestyle we give them, they would give. So I don't die in the ditch over an egg. I don't like eggs. It's not my thing. But I think also we don't need the world to become vegans tomorrow. What we do need is the world to stop eating as much meat for health, for bowel cancer. We've got the highest rate of bowel cancer in the world in New Zealand. And the other thing is 30% of the world's grain is fed to stock. Now, if you want to feed the planet, just feed the people the grain, not the stock. So it's so the rich people can have their meat. So from an ideological point of view and from a pragmatic point of view, animal agriculture is terrible, and history is going to be very, very cruel to us on our treatment of animals.
What about?
Did you see the Teagle footage recently?
Didn't know.
They one of the groups went into a Teagle factory,
right,
and saw all these deformed, dying chicken,
Caged chicken.
No, they're barn raised or whatever.
Okay.
And it was absolutely abhorrent, and it was all over Facebook, and all my friends would go, "Oh, that's disgusting." They weren't breaking any laws. Same with sow crates and your pigs. I mean, a lot of people don't like to know where their food came from. There's this wonderful disconnect. But if you knew where it came from, you knew the life it had, and you had to kill it yourself, how much meat would be eaten?
Yeah, it's a valid question, completely valid. So would it be fair to say that rather for you than health, it's ethical, mostly ethical sort of issues?
Yeah, mostly ethical,
Yeah.
but I've got to say there's wonderful health benefits of it.
And so you don't, there's no animal products, there's no leather shoes, there's no nothing like that, no belts? Nice. How long have you been doing it?
3 years, probably. Yeah. I've been vegetarian for probably 6.
Right.
But again, it's like you got to do it slowly, and it's everywhere in your life. Once you start, you've got, because you want to buy natural fibres, so you want to buy merino wool because it's beautiful and it's a New Zealand product, and and then you think, well, hang on, those sheep are going to die, and milk, and it's like, oh no,
right,
the calves are right. And it's
so
like,
no wool.
No.
See, because I guess that's another, because I guess vegan means no, because...
Well, the thing is, what happens to that animal? You'd argue that the merino sheep probably have the best deal of it, don't they? I mean, they get to hoon around in the hills and get shorn twice a year, so it's not too bad. But, I mean...
But why is that a problem? I mean, educate me.
Why is what?
Shearing a sheep and then using their wool to make a jumper.
It's the fact that you're going to kill it at the end.
Right. So all sheep that get shorn end up being...
Of course they do, yeah.
Same
with cows. Right. It's like, it's just milk, and you go, oh, the cow's fine, she doesn't mind, she wants to be milked. Yeah, what happened to a calf?
Yeah. What about, there's like a few places around Dunedin, I'm not doing it at the moment, but there's a guy up above Portobello who, it's the Holy Cow guys. Don't know if you know of them.
Yeah, I do.
Very, very different setup they've had. Any difference for you?
No, I mean, you've still got to take the calf off its mum, otherwise you don't get the milk. And what happens to the calf?
Yep.
It's a byproduct, so it gets killed. There's better ethics, and worse ethics. But at the end of the day, I think this is why I've obviously given you an absolute diatribe. But it's like, I don't ram it down people's throat when I'm asked.
Yeah,
I will discuss it. I don't ram it down people's throat. Or I want people to be healthy. I want them to make their own decisions. I want them to be informed.
Yep.
If you're informed and you want to go hunting, or you want to go to the butcher, and you're comfortable with where that meat came from, so be it. That's been happening for millennium, and I'm not going to change it. I get that. But all I'll say is just question your own, and you don't have to be vegan. Maybe go one meal a week, maybe 2 meals a week.
Very cool. Hey, listen, what time we got? It's 1:10.
Right.
You've got a appointment to get to at 1:30.
I have, yes.
Thanks for coming in.
My absolute pleasure, mate.
Had fun?
Yeah, there'll be beer next time, eh?
Yeah, we'll do it again, eh?
Good man.
All right, Damian, next time.
Thank you, sir.
Catch you later.